Few animals are as mesmerizing as the octopus, and fewer still are as intelligent. They solve puzzles, open jars, escape aquariums, and in the wild, they regularly outsmart predators. But there's far more to them than clever tricks. Some octopuses attack sharks, others punch fish during cooperative hunts, mothers will starve themselves to death while guarding their eggs. And strangest of all, a few scientists have even suggested that octopuses might have extraterrestrial origins. And when you're dealing with an animal with 3 hearts, blue blood, and skin that can change color and texture in milliseconds, it's not surprising that scientists keep coming back to the same question. What exactly is an octopus? Well, today, we're going to find out. Octopuses are among the most widespread predators in the ocean. Scientists have identified around 300 species so far. They live on tropical coral reefs, in temperate kelp forests, in polar seas, and even on abyssal plains thousands of meters below the surface. In fact, octopuses inhabit every ocean on Earth, which is particularly impressive for an animal whose body has roughly the structural integrity of a half-deflated balloon. Despite this global presence, we are still discovering new species. Even in the age of satellites and deep-sea submersibles, scientists are still figuring out what octopuses even are, which makes everything that follows even more remarkable. In most mammals and birds, large brains evolve for a fairly predictable reason: social life. Think about animals like primates, dolphins, elephants, or crows. Living in complex groups means tracking alliances, rivals, cooperation, and deception. In other words, social life is cognitively expensive. This idea is known as the social intelligence hypothesis, the theory that complex social behavior helped drive the evolution of intelligence. But octopuses don't fit that pattern. Most species are solitary. Encounters between adults are brief and usually limited to mating or territorial disputes. And yet, octopuses show learning, memory, and problem-solving abilities comparable to many vertebrates. So, if their intelligence didn't evolve to manage relationships, what did it evolve for? Increasingly, the answer seems to be their environment. Octopuses hunt in some of the most complex habitats in the ocean: coral reefs, rocky outcrops, kelp forests, and rubble fields. These environments are essentially 3-dimensional mazes, filled with blind corners, moving currents, and hidden predators. To survive, an octopus must constantly combine vision, touch, and chemical sensing while navigating narrow spaces and unstable terrain. And then there's the prey. Crabs, lobsters, and snails are protected by thick shells, spines, and claws. Fish must be seized and subdued. Some octopus species have even been documented killing small sharks and seabirds, dragging them underwater and suffocating them. Capturing such a wide variety of prey requires drilling, prying, immobilizing, or asphyxiating, each situation demanding a different solution. And to make things worse, all of this happens under constant threat. Octopuses themselves are hunted by sharks, dolphins, seals, and large fish, and with no armor, they rely heavily on rapid decision-making, constantly weighing when to retaliate, hide, flee, or freeze. In other words, octopus intelligence didn't evolve to manage social politics. It evolved to survive in a dangerous and unpredictable world, where opportunity or death can arrive from any direction. But the truly strange part isn't why octopuses became intelligent, it's how they also did it. Octopuses belong to one of the rarest categories in evolution. They are part of a small group of animals in which complex intelligence evolved independently. To understand how unusual this is, we have to go back more than 500 million years. At that point in Earth's history, the ancestors of vertebrates and cephalopods shared a common ancestor, a simple animal with little more than a basic nerve net. From that starting point, the two lineages took completely different evolutionary paths. Vertebrates developed internal skeletons and increasingly centralized nervous systems, eventually producing large brains protected inside skulls. Octopuses took a very different route. Their ancestors abandoned external shells, evolved highly flexible bodies, and built a nervous system that extends throughout much of the body itself. This means octopus brains lack many structures typical of vertebrates, including a cerebral cortex. And yet, they still support learning, memory, and complex decision-making. Which means octopuses didn't simply copy the vertebrate blueprint for intelligence. They arrived at something remarkably similar by an entirely different route. An octopus nervous system contains roughly 500 million neurons, placing it in the same general range as many mammals. For comparison, that's about twice as many as a house cat, and roughly similar to a dog. But those neurons are organized in a very unusual way. In humans, more than 90% of our neurons are concentrated in the brain. In octopuses, nearly 2/3 are located in the arms, which means the arms aren't just being controlled by the brain, they're doing some of the thinking themselves. Each arm contains its own network of sensory neurons, motor neurons, and interneurons, forming semi-autonomous processing units. These networks coordinate complex movements, adjust grip strength, and respond to environmental stimuli without constant instructions from the central brain. In effect, each arm functions as a local decision-making center. Experiments have even shown that octopus arms can generate patterned motor activity when temporarily separated from the brain. And the surprises don't stop there. A 2025 study in the Journal of Experimental Biology found that sensory neurons in the arms respond strongly to specific wavelengths of light, particularly in the blue range. In other words, some visual information may be processed directly in the limbs before it even reaches the brain. So, rather than sending all raw information to a single processing center, the octopus filters and interprets much of it locally. The result is a nervous system capable of responding extremely quickly in complex environments while solving multiple problems at the same time. Basically, it's less like a single brain controlling 8 limbs and more like 8 semi-independent systems working together. With a nervous system like that, it's perhaps not surprising that octopuses are excellent problem solvers. Laboratory experiments have shown this for decades. Since the mid-20th century, researchers have trained octopuses to recognize shapes and patterns, navigate mazes, and solve multi-step tasks in exchange for food. More recent experiments have pushed this even further. Octopuses have been observed opening screw-top jars, manipulating complex locking mechanisms, and remembering successful solutions for months, even after long gaps without practice. Which is particularly impressive considering most adult humans struggle with child-proof lids. But some of the most revealing examples of octopus intelligence don't come from laboratories. They come from aquariums. For more than a century, keepers have reported octopuses escaping their tanks at night to hunt in neighboring exhibits. One of the earliest documented cases occurred at the Brighton Aquarium in the 1870s. Staff noticed that fish were mysteriously disappearing from a nearby tank. Eventually, they discovered the culprit. An octopus leaving its enclosure after dark, climbing into the neighboring tank to feed, and then returning home before morning. And this wasn't a one-off incident. Similar escapes have been reported in aquariums around the world. These weren't random breakouts. They required spatial memory, route planning, timing, and risk assessment. In other words, the octopus had formed a mental map of its environment. And in the wild, we see similar ingenuity. Veined octopuses in Indonesia have been observed collecting discarded coconut shells, carrying them across the seabed, and assembling them into portable shelters. This behavior requires planning ahead, transporting objects for later use, and anticipating future danger. In fact, it meets the formal scientific definition of tool use, making it the only clear example of habitual tool use in an invertebrate species. And like many intelligent animals, octopuses don't simply repeat behaviors, they learn from experience. Over time, individuals become more efficient, abandon strategies that fail, and adopt new ones when conditions change. For much of the 20th century, octopuses were believed to be strictly solitary animals. When placed together, individuals often showed aggression or simply avoided one another. But long-term field researchers began to challenge that idea. In the early 2010s, marine biologists studying gloomy octopuses in Jervis Bay, Australia, made an unexpected discovery. They found dense aggregations of octopuses living together at 2 sites, later nicknamed Octopus and Octlantis. And yes, scientists amazingly really named them that. At these sites, dozens of octopuses occupied overlapping home ranges and built dens from shells, stones, and debris, creating unusually high population densities. Over several years, researchers documented repeated interactions between identifiable individuals, including courtship, competition over shelters, evictions, ritualized posturing, and complex color signaling. These sites aren't societies in the way we see in mammals, though. There's no long-term bonding or cooperative care, but they do show that octopuses are capable of managing repeated social encounters, negotiating conflicts, and adapting to crowded situations. And their social flexibility doesn't stop there. Under certain conditions, octopuses even cooperate with entirely different species. Field studies of day octopuses show them hunting alongside reef fish, such as coral groupers. As the octopus probes deep inside coral crevices, hidden prey are flushed outward toward fish waiting at likely escape routes. If the prey retreats deeper into the reef, the octopus intercepts it. If it bolts into open water, the fish capture it. Working together, they form a pincer trap with almost no escape. But the coordination goes even further. Octopuses have been observed adjusting their movements based on the position of their fish partners, sometimes performing a distinctive headstand posture that appears to signal the location of prey within sections of the reef. And when fish interfere or attempt to steal prey, octopuses sometimes respond with a swift strike of an arm, much like a punch. In other words, the octopus appears to be regulating the behaviour of another species. So while most octopuses are not social animals, they are far from socially incapable. Instead, they show something perhaps even more interesting. Flexible social behaviour, interacting, competing, cooperating, and adapting when conditions demand it. Moving away from their intelligence, being an octopus is biologically expensive. A good example of this is their circulatory system. Octopuses have 3 hearts, 2 that pump blood through the gills, and a 3rd that supplies the rest of the body. Their blood is also unusual. Instead of hemoglobin, like most vertebrates, octopuses rely on a copper-based molecule called hemocyanin to carry oxygen. This gives their blood a distinctive blue color. Hemocyanin works well in cold, low-oxygen environments, but it also makes the blood thicker and harder to circulate. Which means octopuses must constantly pump large volumes of blood. One reason they need 3 hearts in the first place. This biological system supports short bursts of powerful activity, but metabolically, it is extremely expensive. Their unusual biology doesn't stop there though. Octopuses can change color and even texture in milliseconds. Beneath their skin lie thousands of pigment cells called chromatophores, each controlled directly by muscles connected to the nervous system. When these muscles contract, colors expand across the skin almost instantly. Beneath them are reflective cells known as iridophores and leucophores, which scatter light to produce shimmering blues, greens, and shifting patterns. Unlike many color-changing animals, these changes are not driven by slow chemical signals. They are controlled directly by the nervous system, which means an octopus can transform its appearance almost as quickly as it can think. The result is more than camouflage. An octopus can mimic rocks, coral, sand, and sometimes even other animals. But even this remarkable ability is only part of their resilience. Octopuses frequently lose arms to predators, and yet they can regenerate them completely. Over time, they rebuild muscle, nerves, and functional suckers, restoring movement and sensation without any scarring. At first glance, such regeneration might suggest a creature built to survive almost anything. But their reproductive strategy tells a very different story. Most octopus species follow a strategy known as semoparity. They reproduce once, invest everything in that single event, and then die. After mating, females attach thousands of eggs to the wall of a den and guard them continuously. During brooding, they rarely leave and often stop feeding entirely. Instead, they survive on stored energy reserves. In extreme cases, such as the deep-sea octopus, Granelodon boreopacifica, mothers have been observed brooding their eggs for more than 4 years, the longest known parental care period of any animal. During this time, mothers actively tend the eggs. Receptors in their suckers detect chemical signals from harmful microbes, allowing them to clean or remove infected eggs. By investing everything into a single reproductive event, octopuses maximize the chances that at least some of their offspring survive. But the cost is total physiological collapse. Hormonal changes suppress feeding behavior and accelerate tissue degeneration, effectively programming death after reproduction. At the opposite end of reproduction, some species exhibit extreme sexual conflict. A 2025 study in Current Biology showed that male blue-lined octopuses inject tetrodotoxin into females during mating. The venom temporarily paralyzes the female, reducing the risk that the male will be attacked, or worse, eaten. Together, these traits reveal a life history strategy shaped by intense evolutionary pressure. Octopuses are not built for longevity, they are built for efficiency, and every part of their biology reflects that reality. Now, imagine trying to locate your own mind. For humans, the answer seems obvious. Our thoughts emerge from a brain inside our skull. But in an octopus, the picture is very different. As mentioned before, nearly 2/3 of its neurons aren't in the brain at all. They're in the arms, which raises a strange question. where exactly is the octopus's mind? Well, neurophysiological studies show that information flows constantly between the arms and the central brain, with processing happening at multiple levels. Rather than a single command center, the octopus nervous system behaves more like a distributed network, closer to a swarm than a hierarchy. Because of this, many researchers argue that octopus cognition must be studied on its own terms. Applying human-style tests risks misunderstanding what their intelligence actually looks like. One of the few behavioral windows scientists have into an animal's internal experience is through sleep. Laboratory studies show that octopuses cycle between quiet sleep and a more active state, marked by rapid eye movements, muscle twitches, and dramatic color changes. During these periods, their skin patterns shift through sequences associated with hunting, camouflage, and signaling. Some neuroscientists believe this resembles REM sleep in vertebrates, the stage associated with dreaming and memory consolidation. Another approach scientists use to probe awareness is the mirror test, which examines whether animals can recognize themselves. The idea is simple. Place a mirror in front of an animal and watch how it reacts. Does it behave aggressively, as if confronting another individual? Or does it inspect its own body, suggesting that it understands the reflection is itself? When octopuses are given mirrors, the results are complicated. They often show prolonged interest in their reflection, they explore behind the mirror, display threat postures, and attempt tactile interaction. In some experiments, when the researchers place visible marks on the animal's body, certain individuals touch the marked area, which suggests that they understand that the reflection is themselves. Unfortunately, they often do so even without a mirror present, which makes genuine self-recognition difficult to confirm. Because of this, many researchers now suspect that the mirror test may simply be the wrong tool for animals like octopuses. After all, their bodies are constantly changing shape, color, and texture. For an octopus, a stable self-image may not exist in the same way it does for primates. Beyond individual experiments, a growing body of evidence points towards something deeper. Octopuses show curiosity, play-like behavior, persistent problem-solving, and a long-term avoidance of painful stimuli. Together, these patterns suggest something more than simple stimulus and response. They suggest subjective experience. In 2021, a major scientific review commissioned by the UK government examined the evidence for animal sentience. And, well, the conclusion was striking. Cephalopods, including octopuses, met multiple criteria for sentience. As a result, they were formally recognized as sentient beings under UK law in 2022. Thankfully, similar discussions are now taking place in other countries, and this reflects a broader shift in scientific thinking. Instead of asking whether octopuses think like humans, researchers are asking a different question. What does it mean to be an octopus? What does the world feel like to a mind distributed across 8 arms, embedded in living skin, and shaped by constant contact with water, light, and touch? Most likely, we will never fully know the answer. But the evidence increasingly suggests that an octopus does not simply react to its environment, it experiences it. Earlier, I mentioned that some scientists have suggested that aspects of octopus evolution may have originated from outer space. The idea comes from a controversial 2018 paper published in Advances in Genetics. Its authors proposed that viruses or genetic fragments carried by comets and meteorites could have influenced the evolution of cephalopods. The hypothesis draws on an older concept known as directed panspermia, first discussed seriously in the 1970s, most famously by molecular biologist Francis Crick, one of the discoverers of the DNA double helix. The idea suggests that life, or the building blocks of life, may sometimes travel through space, carried by comets, and occasionally delivered to planets like Earth. Now, to be clear, the authors of the 2018 paper were not claiming that octopuses are literal aliens. Instead, they were trying to explain a genuine biological puzzle. Octopus genomes contain unusually high levels of mobile genetic elements and extensive RNA editing machinery, features associated with neural flexibility and learning. So, some researchers suggested that certain aspects of octopus complexity appeared to emerge unusually rapidly in evolutionary terms. When scientists looked more closely at the evidence, a much simpler explanation emerged. Comparative genomics shows that octopus genes fit neatly within molluscan evolutionary lineages, diverging from squid and cuttlefish roughly 135 million years ago. Their genomes show gradual modification, duplication, and repurposing over time, exactly what standard evolutionary processes predict. In other words, and this may be disheartening, there is no credible evidence that extraterrestrial viruses played any role in octopus evolution. Unsurprisingly, most evolutionary biologists reject the panspermia-based interpretation. Not because it's controversial, but because it's just unnecessary. And yet, the existence of such a hypothesis is revealing, because it shows just how strange octopuses appear to us. When familiar explanations seemingly struggle to explain their biology, even scientists sometimes reach for extraordinary ones instead. So in that sense, the alien octopus idea tells us less about space and more about how extraordinary life on Earth can be. Octopuses are intelligent and endlessly strange. In many ways, they challenge our assumptions about sentience and what consciousness can look like. And despite everything scientists have discovered about them, we are still uncovering new species, new behaviors, and asking new questions. Which means the mystery we started with isn't fully solved. What is an octopus? Well, we may never have a complete answer. But what we do know is that evolution has produced something remarkable. A large, flexible intelligence built without bones, language, or social hierarchies. A mind spread across 8 arms, embedded in living skin, and shaped by constant interaction with its environment. And perhaps most importantly, an animal that appears capable of experiencing the world, not merely reacting to it. Which means the more we learn about octopuses, the more they force us to rethink what a mind can be. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you learned something from this video. If you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing. And remember, we may be apes, but we should strive to be sensibly simian. Until next time, bye. Inject tetrodotoxin. Tetrodotoxin. Inject tetrodotoxin. Inject tetrodotoxin. Balloon-lined octopuses inject tetrodotoxin. Inject tetrodotoxin. Inject tetrodotoxin. That male blue-lined octopuses inject tetrodotoxin. Inject tetrodotoxin. Inject tetrodotoxin.